Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Keep It or Change Cars podcast. My name is Gugu Masuku, your host, and I'm joined by two of the usual suspects. Firstly, Adam Ford, welcome back.
Thanks, Gugu. Good to be back.
Well, I don't have to invite you. You just come in every time.
Yeah, no, I'm part of the furniture now.
I can tell. We've also got the owner of Change Cars, Mike Pursuit.
Thank you. Good to be here. Lovely to have Adam here. Whenever Adam's here, we've got an interesting show ahead.
Yeah.
And there's lots of debate. I love debating with Adam. There's no Audi questions today, so
Oh, thank goodness for that.
I'll be the referee in this one. I'll be the intermediary. Just say, okay, guys, time out. Cool off. Okay, so the first one for us to get into today is one that really irks Michael. I know that for a fact, and he's always talking about it because he always gets asked questions about the whole rent-to-own system, and it really does irk you. I've seen that. But Adam, on your side, what are your views on the rent-to-own system, both from a service provider point of view and from the person renting?
I think before we start with me, I want to know why it irks Mike.
Yeah, why does it irk you?
Because I'm interested to know why he's irked about it.
So one of the key components for me of any business that I'm involved in is making sure that the customer is advantaged, not disadvantaged.
Sure.
Everybody, whether you're a trader, whether you're a bank, you're entitled to make money. But what the rent to never own, as I refer to it, concept essentially does is it trades on the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable. Those who can afford it the least are being charged the most. If I think it's coming across clearly, I detest it. And we'll discuss the figures in a moment. I take it you see it slightly differently, and I'm always open to learning.
To be honest with you, Mike, when it comes to the rent-to-own story, I'm not really that up to date with the whole scenario like you are. What I understand about it, of course, is that somebody who cannot get finance generally goes to rent-to-own. So take, for argument's sake, I'll say I have a bad credit rating, or I can't get finance for whatever reason it is. But I can afford to pay the 3,000-4,000 rand a month or
In
whatever
theory,
it is.
in theory.
I'm talking in theory. So I go along to one of the rent-to-own places and I say, look, I want to rent-to-own. Let's use an example of a VW Polo. And they say, fine, we'll find, either they find you a car or they have a car in stock on their showroom floor. You buy this Polo, you put a fat admin fee down.
Of course.
And so that admin fee is literally, you can change the wording saying that's your deposit. And then you pay them on a monthly basis. Now, I know that it's very high interest rates.
Astronomical.
So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, you're going to pay, let's say for argument's sake, 4,000 Rand a month on a 100,000 Rand car, where it should normally cost you 2,000 Rand a month. So it's a lot more. But you're going to pay that over a specific period of time. At the end of that period of time, you own the car.
Correct.
But there's so many terms and conditions that a lot of people don't understand. And I'm sort of with you there when you were saying, the people who are in trouble are now going to get a bit more in trouble because they just want a car so they can get around and they don't really look at the terms and conditions.
So I want to refer to it as a marriage of inconvenience. Let's look at the client. They should not be paying any installment because they're delinquent. When I say delinquent, from a creditor basis,
Yes.
The person who's lending them the money should not be lending them the money. Then let's look at the actual numbers. For the purpose of this discussion, for every 100,000 Rand you finance through a bank at Prime Plus 3 today, it will be 2,400 Rand. I buy a 100,000 Rand car, I'm creditworthy, I'm going to pay 2,400 Rand. You'll go to the rent-to-own companies, they take the dregs of cars, Polos that have got 200,000 kilos, that is worth 70, 80,000 Rand, and I'll be charging you 4,000 Rand for that.
Sorry to interrupt there. So are you telling me they're not using new cars for the system?
Not a chance.
Look, I understand that you can actually buy a new car rent to own. But
No, you can. I
where
think
you would,
can, yeah,
if you were credit worthy. So let's say, Google, you credit worthy and you're going to go out and you're going to buy yourself a car. It's going to cost you, let's say, 4,000 Rand a month on a normal West Bank finance.
Normal
or wherever the
150,
finance.
160,000 Rand car, brand new.
You're now going to be paying obviously a lot more. I don't know if it's exploiting or if it's the fact that, people, I need a car. And if I have to pay, I can afford to pay 5 grand a month,
Sure.
even though I know the car should be costing me 3 grand a month, but I can't get finance for whatever reason. I'm going to get exploited. I'm going to go and do that and get into a car. So in the one hand, it does help people who need transport, but I understand what you're saying about, they're getting rogered.
There's always two sides to a story. Let's flip it. Look at the service provider. They are taking a gamble because I'm going to Joe Schmo, who's credit not worthy. He's clearly taken a few people in his path. Now I'm saying I'm going to take a chance on Joe, but the chance of Joe paying me, would you like the name Joe Schmo?
No, he's clearly taken a few people
No,
down.
but he has. That's why he's credit not worthy.
Yeah.
So my question is, or my point is, I'm the seller now.
Yeah.
I've got to double up on what I'm charging you, because 1 in 2 of those deals is going to go bad. If the deal goes bad, will I get the car back?
I hear you. I mean, the doubling up part is standard, but also you're putting down a fat deposit or an admin fee, like
Which
Adam
is
says.
you don't get that back.
Non-refundable.
Yeah.
If you are not credit worthy, I'm telling you, there's only one option that you have. You choose between Uber and Bolt and any of the other ride-hailing apps.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Do not go buy a car on this rent-to-own.
Look, I went onto some of these rent-to-own websites today just out of interest to have a look and see. And, you know, a lot of the frequently asked questions, one of them was, well, what happens if I want to return the vehicle, you know, after, let's say, a year, and there's, let's say, a 5-year contract? Then you just have to give them a month's notice and return the vehicle to them. So, you know, on the one hand, I'm looking at this thing, well, on paper, it doesn't look too bad. You know, you can go out, let's say you want to rent a car for 6 months to a year because of your financial circumstances. You want to get yourself in a better position, but you can't get finance for those periods. You can go to these places, but you've got to understand, you are going to get rogered, charged a lot. The cost to you is going to be very exorbitant.
That's exorbitant.
I think it's a bit like somebody who's had 3 heart attacks in the last year going to an insurance company and saying, I want some life insurance. You are not going to pay 100 Rand a month for your life insurance. They're going to say, sure, no problem. We're going to insure you for, 20,000 Rand a month. Do you want it? Yes or no?
That is a genuinely good analogy. And go one step further. That insurance company knows there's a very real chance that your 4th heart attack is going to be a fatal one.
Yep.
So instead of paying you out, there'll be that clause right at the bottom that's 11 pages long.
It says if you have a heart attack, we're not paying out.
Correct.
But if you die anyway else.
If you die any other way, if you
That's
die parachuting from a what do you call it, a SAF airplane, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So look, I think ultimately for me, what I'm seeing here, I mean, I've heard your side and it makes sense. Adam's side as well. I think it's a case of willing buyer, willing seller.
Correct.
You know, if you're
That's true.
desperate and you need it,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you're willing to pay that kind of money. Cool.
I think what it is a very good question for people out there who are not too aware of how the rent-to-own works. If you go through the whole process, let's say you buy the car and you finance it over, let's say 54 months, and you pay it over 54 months, at the end of the period, the car is yours. But the chances of you actually lasting those 54 months is quite unusual because like you quite rightly mentioned, Mike, a lot of these cars are older cars. I mean, this particular website I went on today, it said you can go out and find a car. So I phone you, Mike, and I say, Mike, I have found a car at Gugu's showroom. It's a Ford Focus. I want to buy that car. It's got 100,000 Ks on it. They buy the car for me and then they finance it to me. That's where they're making money out of it, is that they're making money out the finance, not out of the vehicles. But then there's lots of other things that need to be done. You need to have it insured. You need to go specific. You can have it maintained at an RMI workshop. You can't get Mike to service it for.
Of course.
So then who takes care of maintenance on that car?
So some of them will sell you a maintenance plan with it if you want to, but then obviously that's all just add-ons and add-ons and add-ons at the end of the day. It's very, very expensive. But for somebody who can't get finance, who needs a vehicle, what happens if you're a salesman?
Yeah, for sure.
And you need a vehicle, you're an on-road salesman, you need a vehicle, and, you just haven't looked after your financial situation. You've had cars repossessed, but, it's a position of, I need the job. I'll sacrifice because I need that job and I'll pay a bit extra for it.
It would be very interesting, and I'm not trying to prove a point, but if you took any of our audience and they did a calculation, 4,500 Rand on a rent-to-own will buy you a car of no more than 100,000 Rand.
Yeah, but I can't get finance.
100%, but I'll go one step
So I'm
further.
gonna pay for it.
4,500 Rand out of pocket. I've got to do insurance, another 800 Rand. 5,300. My fuel, another 2,000 Rand. Now I'm at 7,500 Rand. Are you going to spend 250 Rand every single day on an Uber? I guarantee you wouldn't.
You know what? Why don't we do this? You're a businessman. Why don't you come up with your own little concept that serves this audience that's in trouble so that they don't have to go the rent-to-own route?
If you go onto the internet, Uber have already done it for me, but thank you for the great suggestion.
Want SA's leading insurance? Visit changecars.co.za and click on the Discovery logo. All right, so our first of 2 questions is from a gentleman by the name of Timber. and he stays in Illovo, which I assume is here in Joburg, just around the corner from
Not
our studio.
Illovo in KZN.
Well, it actually could be Illovo in KZN.
Illovo,
Where the sugar
Johannesburg.
comes from.
Yeah, where the sugar comes from, or Stanger, by the way. Now, Temba says he's a huge fan of Buyer's Guide, and he says he follows all three of us on the show. And he says he can proudly share that he's a fan of us for different reasons, right? He says for myself, he says it says I'm cool, and he likes my sense of style, which I appreciate. Thank
I
you,
like
Temba.
the emphasis you've put on that. Very
No,
nice.
I didn't. And Adam, he says you like so properly knowledgeable, and people can trust your opinion.
Well, I should hope so. And if people don't know what Buyer's Guide is, you better tune into Ignition TV
Better start
so you can watch
watching TV,
us on Buyer's
right?
Guide and see.
Right? And Mike, he says you're a people's person, and you make people feel special. Do you agree?
For sure. I love
So
you.
basically what he's saying, I'm the brains trust and you guys are just the hangers on us.
Thank you.
So now what Timbo would like to know is why cars have become so complicated in terms of simple things like radios, aircons, and that sort of thing. Just setting up little simple things. One of my biggest irks is that you review cars all the
Yes,
time, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
having to go into a screen to dial up the aircon or change the temperature, for me,
Sometimes the ergonomics of these things are pointless. And, I think it starts off with one manufacturer. So I'll use an example. BMW come out with something that Mercedes haven't got. And Mercedes say,
Innovative.
No, I can't. We can't have
be left
BMW
behind.
having this and Mercedes are having that. And then Mercedes, well, we got to up them. And it's this big competition. Like we talk about connectivity nowadays. You're talking about, every car has a screen. Who's got the biggest screen? So they started off with a small little screen that or not even a small screen, start with a radio you can connect your phone to. Now you got to have a big screen. Now we can't have a big screen. We got to have a Mursa big screen. So the whole dash has got to be digital. And I suppose that's the way technology is going. And if you see how, you can integrate all this stuff with software into the cars, for the manufacturer, it actually becomes quite simple. Because like you mentioned, Gugu, and a great point, because something I can't stand, is like you're in a car and you're driving, you're at a screen. Now you're driving along and you're listening to the radio, but you want to turn up the aircon. Oh, hang on a sec. I've got to get out of the screen. And now you're looking at the screen and you're pressing buttons and eventually, and before you know it,
driving.
you've driven up the oak's backside.
Yeah.
So much for safety. So it's a bit of a different safety feature, or non-safety feature, let me say. But
Okay.
everybody's now on this whole bandwagon. And the youngsters of today, like Google, you want connectivity. You want to be able to get your Apple phone or your Android phone, and you want to be able to connect to the car, and you want all that technology to come through, and you want to play on music, and you want to see your WhatsApps and chat to everybody. This is what everybody as a consumer wants. And the motor manufacturers are trying to better each other.
They take it too far, essentially.
Take it, it's gone.
too
It
far.
has gone out of hand.
Yeah.
But I mean, the technology in what you're seeing in your car is nothing compared to what's inside mechanically of the car. The technology that's going into suspension, that's going into just your lights. I mean, just an example. You go along and buy Mike's favorite car, an Audi, and they say, "What lights would you like?" What do you mean? What lights do I want? I want headlights. No, do you want
Matrix, LED.
Exactly. Do you want halogen bulbs? Because they only put out this much light. Or do you want xenons? I don't know. I'm not too sure. We can give you matrix LEDs,
It turned the corner before you get
Before you
there.
get
Yes,
there.
it's corner. So, and all that stuff has to get coded to computers. There's so much software in cars nowadays that us as technicians nowadays, you get a car that comes in with a problem and you're going with your diagnostic equipment, you're trying to find the problem, and it turns out it's some software glitch, some super geek who's 25 years old wearing a dust coat in some lab in Munich
Thick
has forgotten
glasses.
to put a naught instead of a 01, 00 or something, and now the car every now and then stalls on you.
But what I'm not convinced, I'm not arguing with you. You take the question came from Temba.
Yeah.
He's a consumer. You're a journalist. I'm a motor dealer. I'm a car driver. If I say to you, cars, in my opinion, have gone backwards, it obviously irks him as well. When I want to scratch my nose, I don't want to have to scratch my ear first and then scratch my nose.
Yeah.
I've just sold a Honda VTEC Civic, the VTEC R.
Yeah.
One reason I hated that car.
Type R.
Ergonomically, Type R, that car was so ergonomically flawed. I got in the car, it would say to me, do I want it screened on? Well, of course I want it on, because if it's not on, I can't drive the car.
Yeah.
Do I want it in English? No, overnight I've become a Spaniard. But for what?
You see,
Where
that's
does this come from?
That's poor design stuff. And the other thing as well is that we get cars in our market that are designed for more technically advanced markets. Now, you used Honda as an example. Japanese love tech. And you see it in all the Japanese cars in terms of, the way they design things and stuff like that. As long as you can play with stuff and fiddle with stuff, because who designed it? Some 25-year-old super geek in a white dust coat. He's done it again.
I won't mention the brand because I genuinely do love the brand. It's actually not Audi in this particular case. I get in my car. I want to put my phone on, connect it. But as I put the car in reverse, the camera comes on. So nothing else can work until I'm out of the driveway and the reverse camera goes off. But it gets better. The reverse camera doesn't go off when you put it into drive.
It sits there for 5 seconds.
The reverse camera changes into a forward-facing camera because I can't see through the windscreen. My eyesight's not really good.
Yes.
So for the first 25 seconds, I can't do anything but look at my reverse camera. And then I'm already on the road and it just irks me.
Your radio's gone off and all that kind of stuff.
2008, Land Rover Discovery 3. Turn the knob. That's where. Once you put the aircon on, I turn the knob. I love the car. Never for sale.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You see, it's the super geeks going mad, and it's the technology that's moving on, and it's what certain people demand. I want more technology. I mean, you look at any motor review now on any car. What's the first thing they mention? Oh, it's got a 10-inch
Absolutely.
screen.
Yeah,
mine's bigger than yours. It's got a 12-inch screen.
No, it's got dual screens.
Oh, yes, dual screens.
That's
like a
the
Range
thing now.
Rover, the
Yes.
driver can watch the navigation and the passenger can watch a movie.
Watch a movie on
Yeah.
the same screen.
All this technology is great, but most of the time you don't use it. The worst thing out, I think BMW brought out was a Mercedes, one of the two, or maybe they had it both.
What is it?
Gesture control.
BMW. It's gimmicky,
It's
doesn't
stupid,
work,
you
and
don't
it's
use
stupid.
it. It's the same with
Tell
Volkswagen.
me
They
about
had on
this.
some
I
of their
haven't heard of
cars.
it.
Gesture control. So now you're going to wave your hand at the screen. So now you want to change the screen. Don't touch the screen. You wave your hand at it. And then before you know it, it's changing radio stations and phoning your
So
girlfriend and
you
whatever.
would hate the car. Anyone who knows you knows that you're a sign language person.
Like if I tell my car this, will it get the picture? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
No, but no, really. So you're sitting in the car having a conversation and you're using your hands. Next thing, the song changes. You're like, but who changed the song? Oh, sorry, that you just did this by mistake. Okay.
Some of it works really well. Hey, Cherry, open my sunroof.
That's it.
And then the sunroof
For
opens.
sure.
But frickin' hell, I can just put my finger up and go dunk and open the sunroof and it's quicker. So we got this voice activation stuff as well. Sometimes it's nice. I know in my car I press it to say phone home and it'll call home.
Yeah.
But sometimes I press to say phone home, phoning Michael.
Does E.T. answer?
What the hell? How does
that
Michael
bastard.
and phone home sound the same? Yeah, the technologies, and quite frankly, I got so many clients of mine who've got newer cars with technology in them, no idea how half of it
So
works.
true.
I mean, I remember having one particular brand that had this big screen, the whole dash, everything is one big screen. And I had the car for a week. And at the end of the week, I still didn't know how this thing, half the stuff worked. And like you were saying, trying to get into the radio station, you've got to have a PhD in physics to work out how the radio station works. So when you get older generation people who go
Listen
out
to
now,
us. Listen to us, guys.
Yeah, no, I'm talking, let's say you get somebody who's in his 70s now wants to go buy a car.
He's in trouble.
Where's the key?
Yeah,
No,
he's
you
in
just put the
trouble.
key in your pocket and then you press a button. No. That don't work for me. Where's the radio station knob? No, you have to go into this screen, go to that screen.
There was a YouTube video that I saw, and it was a guy like in his 60s, and he started off very calm.
I
and
know
he
which
goes,
one you're talking about.
I just want to ask nicely. I'm asking very nicely. All I want to do is just set the clock. And then he goes on. And he goes, now, again, I'm listening nicely. All I want to do is just effing set this clock. I don't want to go into the computer. I don't want to take out my owner's handbook. And he just starts getting whoosh. He says, I just want to set the time in my car.
It's a perfect thing. And I remember he's got the manual of the car. It's about 500 pages.
Yeah.
Where do you find a frickin' thing to set the clock?
And he
100%.
loses it
Really?
from calm to that.
No, that's what our viewer is saying.
Looking to buy a new or used car? Visit changecars.co.za.
Okay, guys. So I want to talk a bit about car buying. So I know you buy and sell every day. Adam, you bought and sold.
I
a
You
fair
dabble
amount.
in it, yes.
You
of
dabble
course.
in it from time to time. So the difference and the rather positives and negatives between buying privately versus buying from a dealer. What are we dealing with there? Because I know there are positives to each and pitfalls to both of them. Adam?
I got a perfect example. Yesterday, I had a client of mine sell his VW Golf 1.2 diesel. You know that 3-cylinder horrible 1.2 diesel thing. Okay, so it sold it to somebody. The next day, it was yesterday morning, the guy gets a phone call from the guy he bought it from and said, no, when he started in this morning, it struggled like hell to start and it wouldn't start and there was a big pile of smoke and everything out of it. So then the private seller, who's this client of mine, says to me, what do I do? I said, well, basically, you got to tell the guy, I'm sorry, get it fixed. You bought the car, it's private. There's no backup or anything for it. If you want to, out of your own goodwill, say to the guy, take the car in somewhere, let's have a look and see what the problem is.
Did the private seller know? Did your customer know that it was giving trouble? Was this a symptom that it had before?
I know the vehicle and it wasn't given problem, but because we had this terrible cold spell, the car
cool
struggled
plugs.
because it was cold.
Yeah.
And eventually, this client of mine is a good guy. He sent the car to me with the owner, and I checked it out for him and said, the problem is the glow plugs don't work on the diesel car. So you need to replace the glow plugs. The client who owned the car paid for it. That's fine. That's a good story. But there's so many people who would buy a car like that where somebody knows there's a problem. So I bought a car from you, Gugu, private sale. I went and bought your Mercedes, whatever. I phone you the next day and said, the gearbox packed up. You say, well, you bought the car, tough cookie. But if I go to Mike and I buy a bus from Mike and in
He's
a
got
month's time,
warranties and things.
and a month's time, the gearbox falls out of the car, Mike, what do you do?
All cars under the CPA are guaranteed for 6 months, in theory, because a lot of the garages don't honor that. We personally, and that's the honest truth, we give a 1-year unlimited kilometer guarantee. But regarding the topic, I think it's an excellent question, because this is one of those questions where there's no clear-cut right or wrong.
Yeah.
If you said to me, en masse, would I recommend buying privately or buying from a dealer? It would be buying from the right dealer. But let me give you positives to each. Adam's owned a car since new, 8 years old. He's my neighbor. I know the car. I see it every day. Would I buy that car from Adam with my eyes closed?
Yeah.
The negatives come in if I need finance, etc. There's challenges. Who's going to roadworthy it? Where I would never buy a car privately is when you're buying a car from a friend of a friend who's heard that his friend's looking to sell it. When I go to a reputable dealer, everything is super simple. I walk in, I've got a trade-in, they'll take my trade-in. I need finance, they'll organize finance. I need insurance, they'll do it. What is the perception of buying private versus dealer?
Well, it's much cheaper to buy it
100%.
privately.
So that's
it is.
the upside of buying privately.
That's a perceived upside.
Really?
But
no. Don't say it's a perceived upside, because from a dealer's making a profit, right?
Of course. But you're a private seller. How do you arrive at the price for your car? You go onto one of the websites, you go onto ChangeCars, you go onto Auto Trader, leading sites. You see a VW Polo selling for 250,000 Rand at the dealer down the road from me. It's got 96,000 Ks. Mine has got 92,000 Ks. What is my car worth in my eyes as a private seller?
More than that.
More than that or the same. So that's why I use the word perceived. I will put my neck on a block with very few exceptions will you get a better deal privately than you'll get through a dealer.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
And I think you used the correct term, like you said, if your neighbor's got a car, you know the car, you get it.
Eyes closed.
If you're getting a great deal, so like you mentioned, let's say the Polo is going for 100,000 Rand, but you know somebody else is selling a private sale and you know the history of it, whatever, and they want, because they got offered a trade-in of, let's say, 80,000 Rand for the car, then it's generally a good buy. But you've got to understand the pitfalls. If you have a problem, there is no recourse. There is no recourse, unless you've got a good guy like my client who went and sorted this thing out. But that's a small thing. It was, 2,000 Rand job. But the other thing as well is from a private buyer selling a vehicle. So like Mike said, if you're going to sell your vehicle, you take it into Mike and you say, I want to buy one of yours. He trades in the vehicle. Or if you go, you don't have to worry about license, registration, anything. I sell my private car to you, Gugu, and you just look at the license disc and say, well, I've still got 10 months worth of license on here. You drive it for 10 months. You don't care about roadworthying the car. You don't care about changing the ownership.
100%.
Previous owner, me, is now getting fines and e-tolls and
Can I
whatever
just chime
it is.
in there?
Yeah.
I am probably 5 or 6 years with a bike I don't have, and I pay for that disc every single year.
It's still in somebody else's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need to scrap it like soonest.
So here's the problem. Take a car scenario, and you've done what you've done there, and you go along and you drive that car, and you're a bad guy, and you'd run over a school kid, as an example, and you drive off, like most people do in this country nowadays when they have accidents. They drive off and don't care about anybody else.
A growing crime of driving over school kids in South Africa.
Yeah, but I mean, you have an accident or bumper bashing. I mean, how many times have we heard the story? People just run away. But if somebody gets your number plate now, okay, they're going to come to me and say, Adam, you in your whatever car it was, had this accident, ran over a child, killed somebody, whatever it is. I'm responsible for it. So if you're selling your car privately, one of the good things to do is to sell. If you rather sell it to a dealer, but if you have somebody that you're going to buy it from, you're going to maybe make a little bit of extra money for it, or whoever it is, make sure you get that vehicle taken out of your name and put into the other person's name. So what you can do is you keep a copy of the license papers. You take Gugu's ID because Gugu's buying it from me, and you go to the license department and say, I've sold this car to Gugu. Here's the license. Here's his ID. Please put it into his name. It's no longer in your name. It's out. If Gugu doesn't want to register it and he doesn't want to do the roadworthy on it and pay the license, that's no longer your problem. That's his problem.
You don't have to rely on the other party to do the right thing. In this case, you do the right thing. But if you take the discussion point as such, there's always pros and cons. But en masse, I would say to you, it's a lot safer to buy from a reputable dealer than buying from a private person. And to sell, you take the buying sites, Wheelie, We Buy Cars. You're looking to sell your car to these sites. I promise you, you will not have a day's trouble.
Yeah.
Or change cars, of course.
Yeah.
You've always got to save the best for last.
That's it.
Need advice? Visit changecars.co.za and click on the Keep It or Change Cars tab.
Our second question is from Melissa, who's from Pretoria. And she wants to know why servicing quotes differ so much, right? And she gives an example of her own car. We won't mention the brand of the vehicle, but it is mainstream. She says, as she's on a budget and her Japanese car is out of service plan, she's always getting 2 different dealerships to quote her when she needs something done on the car. And she indicates that while the basics are very similar, you'd think that the 2 dealerships are looking at 2 different vehicles.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, is it the same brand of dealerships, or is it an aftermarket dealership and a franchise dealership? Because a franchise dealership costs are always much higher than that of a non-franchise dealership.
I spoke to Melissa because this was actually a call in, and she said, I said to you, there's a specific reason we're not mentioning the brand, but there's different branches. Specifically franchise, because she wants the peace of mind.
Yeah, most of the time the franchise dealers have like a set menu, really, where this is the price of the car. It's set by the manufacturer itself and says, okay, this service will cost you that much. Now, I know like in different areas, so for argument's sake, like she's in Pretoria, you can get it'll be a bit more expensive than if you were in like, let's say Port Elizabeth, where labor rates are less and so forth. But in terms of in like Pretoria, the same dealers, there should be the same sort of thing.
So what concerns her? She'll take the car in. Oil filter, air filter, fuel filter.
Yeah.
No questions. Needs to be done. Very similar.
Should be a standard
But then
price for
the
that,
one dealer says your front brakes need to be done. Other dealer says your front brakes are perfect. Other dealer says your rear discs need to be replaced. And the other dealer doesn't even mention it. It's that always surprises me. Even as a motor dealer, we will sometimes take a car to a garage for a major service because before we sell the car, as indicated, we give a 1-year guarantee. You get the basics and fundamentals right, no problem. We'll get a quote for 26,000 Rand. Ludicrous. I'll say to my office colleagues, never in a million years. Send it down the road, exact same manufacturer. Quote comes 11,000 Rand.
Yeah.
How does that happen, Adam?
Well, I think what actually happens is, like you mentioned, brakes. Somebody will look at brake pads and say, okay, these are 50% worn. Let's replace it because it won't make it to the next service interval because the next service interval is, let's say, 15,000 kilometers. The next workshop you send it to looks at it and says, well, there's 50% of those brake pads. I don't want to change them now because it's going to be too expensive for the customer, and they can last another year and they'll come back in another year. So, that is the one thing that sometimes has a differential. But in terms of the pricing on parts
should be identical. Sometimes
the labor changes, but there are certain manufactured dealers that maybe spend a little bit more attention and say, look, we need to replace this. We found this is maybe they're a bit more, what is the word I want to use, in depth in their service as opposed to just getting it like a drive-through in and out.
So there's always 2 sides to a story. So there's not a shadow of doubt in my mind that certain dealerships push the envelope. Let's look at brakes. Yeah. Brakes should give you 100% wear. But what you don't want to do, obviously, is go take your car for a service today and 2 months later, when you're expecting it to be 10 months later, have to do brakes again.
Yeah.
What I would do, you put on the invoice or you phone the customer and say, Mr. Ford, we've got good news for you. Your brakes have still got 35% left. You don't want to waste 35% of your brakes, but please bear in mind that it will not make it to the next service. What would you like to do?
You see, things like brakes, it can be such a difficult thing because, Mike, you do a lot of highway driving. You don't use your brakes much.
Driving styles.
Gugu is stuck in the traffic all day. So his brake pads and yours may wear out at a highly different rate.
Gugu just drives harder on a car than me.
Yeah,
I'm
see, I
smooth,
mean,
I'm quick. I'm
Gugu's
talking about a racetrack, of course.
Yeah. So this is the thing. Sometimes when I have it in my workshop as well, where I'll phone the customer and say, look, your brake pads aren't going to make it to the next service. They'll do maybe 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers. And they may say, look, I do 4,000 or 5,000 Ks a year. So I'll bring it in at a later stage and save the money now. I can save up. Or they say, look, I don't want the aggravation of having to come back. So sometimes in terms of like different differentials in terms of quotes, it can be quite difficult because you don't exactly know what is happening. You may find the more expensive quote was money well spent. The cheaper quote was piss poor money you wasted.
But what is interesting here and what I take out of this, I'm honest when I say to you, I've never heard of somebody getting 2 quotes. If you get a quote and all seems in line and within your expectations, happy, sign it off. But if for whatever reason it seems a little bit or a lot more expensive than you were thinking, go get a second quote. Naturally, if the second quote is similar, choose which of the 2 are nicer to you. But if there is a vast difference, personally, and they're reputable dealers, I'll go with the cheaper one.
Yeah. The important thing as well is to have a look at the quote to understand what is being replaced. So you may find you phone up a specific dealer and say, my vehicle's in here for a 60,000 kilometer service. They'll say, fine, it's an oil change service and it's 3,000 Rand. The other dealer looks at it and says, no, this is actually a major service and it needs all these other components and it's going to be 8,000 Rand. So you need to have a look and see and just talk to the dealer accordingly. I got a quote from Google and Google quoted me 8 grand, you quoted me 3 grand. Why is there a difference? And then see from there.
So essentially, Melissa, shop around, compare, and get the right deal for you, or go with the people that are nicer to you.
Before we come to the end of the show, I was once asked, what is my favorite quote? What is your favorite quote?
I don't have one.
What is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote, let me think, is Mr. Churchill, you were drunk. That was somebody said to him. And he said,
in the morning, I'll be sober, but you'll still be ugly.
That's it.
So does anybody ask me my favorite quote?
Okay, what's your favorite quote?
The lowest one.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't see where it was going.
Hey.
Dad joke.
Guys, thank you so much for the time. Adam, you're always welcome. I don't need to invite you in here. You just walk right in. And Mike, thank you for being here always. Really appreciate your inputs as well. See you next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Adam.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for having me here today.
And thank you for tuning into the podcast. And if you found value in today's episode, please do us a favor and subscribe. We'd love to have you on and as part of the family. If you're looking for a car, a bike, a caravan, anything short of an aeroplane, go onto the CHANGECARS website and search around, play around. You'll find what you're looking for: vehicle, bike, boat, caravan, etc., etc. And if you need insurance, hit the Discovery tab to get an obligation-free quote.
For South Africa's best motoring content, catch all things motoring on DSTV channel 189 and on YouTube. New episodes every week.